Hello, I'm back again live for the third time this week with another guest right here. I know many of you recognize Halisi because you probably are already following and subscribing to her YouTube channel that she runs with her husband Rick, Our Black Utopia. If you aren't, you absolutely should be subscribed. I don't know what you are waiting for. Um, Today's conversation, y'all, it's going to be a conversation. We're going to see where it goes, but we are, what's this doing this? We are going to talk about something that I think we hear a lot about. That you got to hustle, you got to grind because we're breaking generational curses and we're creating generational wealth. Well, I want to talk about that and like what exactly does that look like? Um, and is that even what we want to do? So, um, if you are new here, because I introduced Halisi, but I didn't introduce myself. My name is Adelia Borchade. This is my channel, Picky Travels the World. That's me. I'm the picky girl, and I be traveling. Gonna be headed to South Africa next week, and I'm really struggling to figure out what the heck I'm supposed to be packing. And those are the kinds of things we talk about on this channel. We talk about travel, we talk about living abroad, which I have been doing for about 7.5 years. I call Mexico City home. And we also talk about money, which is where today's conversation, I think, squarely falls because you got to have some money to do what you want to do. And that's what we're about over here. So, welcome, Halisi. So glad you took me up on my invitation to come and chat.
Of course, of course. You know that, Adelia. So I don't know if you were there last night. Look, let's just keep it real. We would not be here in Portugal if not for your direction and instruction. That's the bottom line. Yours and some
Hold
other
on.
folks.
I'm
Okay.
not, I can't hear you.
Uh-oh.
Hold on. I'm
I can
struggling with
hear
some
you just
technical
fine.
difficulties over here.
Let's make sure my settings are okay. And let us know if you can hear me in the audience, por favor.
All right.
F Doctor, haven't seen in a while.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
And you're okay. I sound okay to you.
Yes.
Yeah, all of a sudden, as soon as you started talking, all I got in my ear was static. And I know the issue is over here. So welcome. Thank you for taking my invitation.
Great. Well, they can hear us both, so that's good. And now that you can hear me, you can actually respond. Give Adelia her flowers. Of course. Of course. That's what we do.
Okay. All right. Okay, so for those, okay, I'm trying to decide where I want to start this conversation. And I think we can probably start with kind of like what the general idea is behind generational wealth. It's this idea that you are going to pass some kind of asset down from one generation to the next. That could be cash, that could be investment, stocks, bonds, real estate, businesses, all of that. Um, because we've all joked about like trust fund babies and um, people whose parents can like give them the down payment for a house and or just buy them a house outright, and all of that is possible because of generational wealth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And as Black folks, that has not been our experience on the whole.
No, no. As a matter of fact, so I got the idea years and years ago. I can't remember Home Chick's name, the actress, but she had a show. I want to say she was on like a newscaster or something like that. It's the girl. If I said her name, it's black chick. You would know who she is because she's been around for a long time, and she started out with that silly movie with the cheerleaders or something. I don't know, like Bring
Every
It
on
On or
Union?
something. That's it. So she was doing really well, and she lived in Atlanta, and the rest of her family was just doing okay. And brother was always trying to borrow money from her, and this and that and the other. And she said, you know, what we should be doing is pooling our money together. And then when somebody needs something, you don't have to go to the bank. You don't have to go with hat in hand. We've got this pool of money and we can be our own bank. And I was like, yeah, that's what we should be doing. But I could never convince other people in our family to do the same thing who I knew, well, first of all, they were spending too much money, of course, just like we were, keeping up with the Joneses and doing what we do with this Black excellence thing. But then there was a lack of trust because they didn't understand the way trusts work. And it was contempt prior to investigation. So that was, and at the time, well, I had already worked for a tax accountant firm, and I saw what the white folks were doing. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. And they're saving all this money on taxes. So we're paying more in taxes. Every generation is starting from scratch. And then we wonder why there's still so much inequity in wealth. And some of that is systemic. Of course it is. But at this point, what are we doing? At this point, when we can really pretty much buy a home anywhere we want in the United States without having to deal with the redlining issue, we can pretty much, we know what a good loan is, and we don't have to go for the okie doke, right? Like, so we know all these things. So now what is our excuse not to, at least from this point forward, start preparing for our grandkids to not have to start from scratch if it's too late for the kids, right? And great grandkids and things like that. So the initial idea came probably way back, and she had this show, Karen, something Mary or something, I don't know,
Me and
2012.
Mary Jane is probably the show you're thinking about.
That's it. That's it.
I'm
It
just
got
I'm
stupid at the end, so I stopped watching it. But at the beginning, when they were talking about it, it was like, yeah, right. You know how shows go. They get goofy and they jump the shark, and they got Fonzie on a shark and doing all this crazy crap. So they run out of ideas. But in the early days, it was really good. And so that's where it started, between what I saw at the accounting firm and then that idea. Then something else happened. A young person who was working for me, and after this was when I ran for office, and she was engaged to someone, and the someone decided that she wanted to go back to school. And her mom said, well, why don't you try to pick a school where we own a house?
Okay. Now, I was raised by a single mother of three who had two of the three kids had severe disabilities. The fact that she owned a house, that was a big deal. And I think the family she came from, they had owned their houses. So like, I think by all intent measures, at least for that family, she was doing okay. She had made it.
Right.
I worked with somebody who has a younger brother. She and I are about a year apart in age, and she was talking about how her brother um, had he had gone to school, but then like that didn't work, and so he was talking about going back to school. And her dad was like, "Well, you need to go to Auburn because we bought that house there." And I'm hearing this for the first time, and I'm like, "Huh?" And she was like, yeah, because I went to school there and they figured he'd go there and it was cheaper to buy the house. It appreciate like that had never occurred to me that you would buy a house for any other reason other than to live in it yourself personally, and that you would buy. When I first heard it, it sounded so like frivolous that you would just buy your kids a house. I mean, I get it now, but my mind was blown. because I was like, y'all, your parents got extra money? Like they're paying their house note and they had the money enough to go buy another house? This was not like, I never grew up where there was a question about whether we were going to eat or the lights were going to be on. But that was the maximum. That was the limit. And that just blew my mind.
We had a couple of people in our extended family that owned more than one home, only because someone inherited grandma's house and then didn't keep it up. So then they ended up getting rid of it because it became a money pit. Yeah, it became a money pit because you didn't keep it up. But yeah, that notion of buying a place where your kids are going to go to college to reduce costs seems like an oxymoron on the surface. But and then the other thing that I didn't realize is that I know it's true if you buy a house for your parents. It's probably true if you buy a house for your kids and they live in it. You can get an FHA loan. So now you ain't coming up off of 20, 30, 40, $50,000 necessarily. Maybe you're coming up off of 5,000, 10,000. That changes the game. So like my cousin, who is a real estate, I'm gonna call him a real estate mogul. he has in his lifetime owned 60 what they call doors. This is what people who are into real estate investing, they say, I own 5 doors, I own 10 doors, 15 doors, because you could own multifamily or you could own single family, right? And so today he owns 40 doors. He's owned as many as 60. But how did he get his start? His very average, work pension earning parents, you know, those ones who stayed at that same job, that same boring behind job that my parents were too good to do, said, whatever you save, I'll match you for both sons. So when I was out there running around being stupid, my cousin, who's my age, at 23, bought a house. And I don't mean like a bungalow. No, he bought a upstairs, downstairs, 3 bedroom, 2 bath, family home at 23 years old. And I mean, this is the man who goes into Zales and negotiates the price down for the wedding ring he was going to give his wife in Zales in the mall. So he probably has the first penny he's ever made. He would save and save and save. When we're going out, oh no, I can't go out. I ain't got the money. But you working. You got that good you got that good white folk job. Now and what? By the time he's 23, he owned a house. Now, my other cousin, his brother, the same thing. He decided he didn't want to go to school and he wanted to he wanted to be a landlord. His dad said, I'll match you, but first you got to learn plumbing, you got to learn electricity, blah, 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 whoop-de-woo. Again, we were talking about, this is a business. So start learning the business of the business. And it's not just about having the money, start learning the business of the business. And it's paid off. And now he is a multimillionaire. And these properties are in a trust, and his kids are set. They're set. And the notion that our parents, especially my parents, as television producers, and the amount of money that they made in a lifetime, and for me to have to start from scratch, because I was like, "Where's my trust fund? Where that?"
Well, I knew I was going to have a trust, and I was right. There was no money. I was lucky that there was no debt per se, but I don't think, and this is not a shot at my mother, I just don't think she wasn't thinking beyond that. It's like she started from scratch, her parents started from scratch. That's just what we do. And I think this idea that, like you said, a lot of the disparity between where we are as Black folks and where white folks are, and I do have, let me see if I can share this properly. I do have a little graph that shows it is a big part of it is systemic, but if there's one thing we know how to do, it is to work and thrive despite the systemic obstacles against us.
Yeah.
Now, both of these show median and mean net worth, and you see the very obvious thing. White people have significantly more wealth than we do, us, Hispanics, people of color in general.
So, Professor, mean is like what we understand as average, and median
Yes,
is just that middle number.
in the middle.
Yeah, which is
And
it's
again, it's the same thing for us.
yeah, just as bad. One doesn't make anyone make us look any better.
Yeah,
Some
the
of
typical
that
white family has like
exactly
8 times the wealth that the
that we
typical
have.
black family does, and 5 times
Even
the wealth a
like when you
typical.
compare like a college graduate or a master's degree graduate with somebody who dropped out of high school, on the white side, right? Like we could make triple, our income could be triple, but the wealth is still just as bad.
Because it's more than about income. And I think for most of us in this community, that was the major concern, that you get a job, you make enough money that you can buy the things you need to buy and you can help the other people. Now that's not my story, because I was in essence basically raised as an only child. Uh, Both of my brothers died when I was fairly young. So like I didn't have that, but I know like Gabrielle Union, this is one of the reasons she made that 50-50 comment by her and Dwayne Wade, was because he got people he's got to help out, she's got people she's got to help out. There's that expectation. So in our community for so long, the focus is income. And then you, the person doing okay, got to be the safety net for everybody else that's not.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah,
And that makes
yeah,
it really hard to
yeah.
leave anything behind.
It does make it hard, and I would encourage you guys to stop. Don't do that. Don't do that. Because, to me, it's tough love. If you co-sign their BS, then you are agreeing that it is okay for them not to be responsible for their own lives. Now, it's different if somebody's not able-bodied or able-minded. But for those who are, no, uh-uh, no. I was told that somebody else was going to pay for my college. They didn't. I figured it out. And I went. It's like, oh, I'm going. My mom was like, do you have the money? I said, no. She said, I guess you ain't going then, huh? I said, like, I'm going. Because she didn't want me to leave the state. So she wasn't going to participate because I wasn't going where she wanted me to go. So,
Mine
that was the
insisted,
beginning.
mine insisted that I go, but was contributing no funds, and didn't even as I was applying say, hey, there is no money. So just FYI, keep that in mind. No, no. Got the acceptance letter from the place I wanted to go. And she was like, that's great, but I can't pay for that. Would have been so helpful to
Know
have
that
known that
in advance.
previously.
Exactly. I got accepted to USC. Oh, there's no money for USC, even in them days. What do you mean? You're a television producer. How is there no money? You know what? So back in, this 10-year difference between us is probably the difference in how financial aid worked, because I just said, okay, you can't claim me anymore. I'm independent. I'm doing my own tax return, and we're going to do the FAFSA based on my tax return, which is like $5,000 a year, right? From my little Bob's Big Boy waitressing job. So that's what I was able to do, but you can't do that anymore.
No, because I couldn't.
Mhm.
And neither can my youngest kid, not
Oh
until
no.
she's 24.
Mm-mm.
And so, I mean, I
See how
guess,
they do? See how they do?
yeah, systemic, systemic.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Now, um, so as we've established in our community, this has not really been a thought. And I think I was looking at some statistics, and like, people will say, okay, I hear what you're saying about generational wealth, but like, I'm trying to eat right now. I don't have no money. I don't know what to do. All of that. Only like 32% of US citizens have wills. I would imagine the number um, who have trusts, because they do different things, is significantly smaller. And this idea that, well, I don't have anything. Like, I'm poor, I'm broke, I ain't got no money. So I don't need to do any of that planning. I don't really need to find out about this because I don't have anything. But you were just talking about how folks kind of got their start inheriting grandma's house. Like, if your grandma and you got a house, like, there are things you can do to at least make sure that moves forward. There are other ways that don't necessarily require as much money. There are ways that don't have the same barriers to entry. Because let's say grandma doesn't own, grandma rents. There are still ways that you can do something to help keep the generations after you from starting from scratch.
That's right. That's right. And at the very least, one of the things that I did is I added my name onto my parents' bank accounts. So there will be no freezing when they transition on. So any kind but what I didn't do is absorb their debt. Like you were saying, at least there was no debt. I don't care what the debt is. That's not my debt. That's their debt.
Oh,
I'm not like I'm not paying that. Like Gloria
I see
Vincent,
people I see people post about like such and such relative died, my mom died, and there are these credit cards, and I'm like, don't pay that is not your bill. That's their bill.
I didn't sign
Whatever
up. You
little
ain't got my
assets there
signature.
are, the last thing you want to do is use that handful of assets to pay off some debt they occurred during their lifetime. Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. And as a matter of fact, I told my mom, I said, we're not paying any of these credit cards anymore. So you might as well just take them out of your wallet because they're going to stop letting you use them because I'm not paying them. She's like, well, I'm paying. No, you're not paying them. If I'm giving you any money for anything, I'm paying them. And so, and we've got to look at it like that because otherwise we will find ourselves being sucked into their bad decisions and not making proper preparations for our own future lives. So that's number one. Um, any kind of um, um, pension or anything like that, death benefits that they may have from their last job, you got to make sure that the beneficiaries have been put on there. I know someone who had no beneficiaries on his big ass pension.
There are
And
a
the
lot of
company
people
just,
who do that
right?
because they're like, oh, the state will give it to who it needs to go to. I mean, technically, eventually,
Maybe
that will happen, but that's like walking up to some stranger and say, here is my wallet. Please distribute this money to the people when I turn my back. Like,
that's not what
you
you want
should
to do.
you should want to control that. Because
Yeah,
again, if your goal should be, because your goal may not be, but your goal should be to help those who come behind not have to start from scratch. You're not setting them up for that.
no,
No beneficiary on your pension.
no, 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 no. And if and so the company, this was a company, not government, the money went back to the company instead of the wife, instead of the wife. So, he probably just assumed my wife is going to get it. She
People
didn't get it.
assume that because they don't know how it works. Probably 3 years ago, I interviewed a probate lawyer, and there is a link to that conversation in the description of this video. And that's one of the things she talked about, is that people just think, oh, when I die, it will go to my wife, it will go to my kids. And that is not necessarily true,
No,
not in the long shot. And you shouldn't be leaving that decision up to the state.
no, because when has the state ever done anything that is in our best interest? They do
Absolutely.
stuff that is in the corporation's best interest. They do stuff that is in rich folks' best interest and the lobbyists who pay them. We don't matter. They don't care about us. They do not care about us. If another thing, if you are just making ends meet, you need to get more income. You just need to get more income. So whether that means getting a roommate, like that may mean that you have to do some things that is not in line with your ego.
I think you've said a word there. I think you have said a word there, because in the work that I do, and I'm sure in the work that you do, people come with a lot of reasons they can't do something. I'm not going to call them excuses, but reasons why this thing can't work for me, why they can't implement this thing. And I often have to fight myself, because the words that come out of my mouth are often sometimes hard to receive. But I'm thinking, well, how bad do you want it? Because when I got divorced, because I made sure of it, a lot of women, they leave a divorce, they're starting from scratch. I made sure that that was not the case, but I also lost a second income. And so as I was, considering my next moves and what to do, one of the things on the table, as I had decided I was not going to be teaching high school anymore, and that if I needed to work at Starbucks, I was going to work at Starbucks. And I realized if I wanted my work life to be less stressful, that was probably going to mean I was going to make less money. And I
Right.
was like, okay, so what does that mean? Am I going to have to be somebody's roommate? Am I going to have to, do this and this? Because again, how bad do I want it? How
Exactly.
bad did I not want to go back to that job?
Exactly. Exactly. And so whatever it is that you are trying to do, if you allow some preconceived notion about how you should be living at any particular point in your life dictate how you handle your money, you're probably not making good decisions. And I can say that because I've been there. Right? I've been there. I'm 30, I'm supposed to have this. I'm 40, I'm supposed to have that. I'm 50, I'm supposed to have this. This birthday, I'll be turning 60. And I have, as far as stuff goes, a lot less than I had when I was 50. But as far as ease of life, less stress, and more money, I have a lot more. Because I said this last night, and it's worth repeating the Paula Pant thing that you always iterate, like you can afford anything, just not everything. And that's the thing. Anything, but not everything. So if you don't own a house, get rid of that debt and get that down payment together. You don't have to live in it. It doesn't have to be a burden. And buy a multifamily home. Do not buy a single family home. It just doesn't make sense today.
Yeah.
Let the house make money for you. Then it is an investment. And that's another thing that I never considered. Like, I'm going to live in an apartment? Moi? Duh. Like the notion that, oh yeah, you can rent out the other side. And in Denver, they had, like in my neighborhood, they literally had 3 bedrooms plus a basement, those kind of duplexes, a full
So
basement, a
that's another
garage,
use.
right? Like 1, 2, 3 bedrooms, 2.5 bathrooms, maybe 3 if they had one in the basement, if they had built that out. Like These were houses that with one wall, and I was tripping. Once I finally got a clue, I didn't take the price point was above what we wanted to spend, and I didn't take into account the money that we would be getting for rent. In my mind, I had to cover the whole thing.
Because again, as a community, our focus, and this is not to point fingers or to say that that was a mistake, given the system in which we exist in the US. That was the biggest strive we could make, because we were existing at, like a sub-poverty level. So I get that. But, you know, just doing enough is only going to be enough. And again, the race starts back over for the next generation.
Exactly.
And that, what's the word I want to say? It's a mindset shift that I think folks younger than us, I think this will be less of thought process, because they won't be so married to the ideas of, I gotta have the house, I gotta have the cars, I gotta have these clothes, that they will be thinking in a different way. And
Yeah.
so the idea of, I don't want to say communally building wealth, but I think the way they're going to look at it is going to be different. So it'll be easier for them. Now, Lisa makes this comment, and I was going to say this because you'll notice, to those of you watching this live, those of you in the watching this in the future on the replay, a lot of what we're talking about, because the whole idea is you want to pass the wealth from one generation to the other. So that involves some kind of death planning. You need to have some kind of plan for how those assets are going to transfer. And this idea that, well, they'll just give it like by default. My wife will get it, my husband will get it, my kids will get it. What happens if y'all have a blended family? What happens if you don't like them kids? Or y'all never got divorced, but you don't fool with her no more. Y'all been separate, because we all have those folks in our family who technically married, but ain't lived in the same house in 30 years. All of that stuff comes into play when it's time to divide assets after somebody dies. And I was so, when Chadwick Boseman died, I was like, we had Prince, we had Aretha Franklin. Personally, I think Prince did it on purpose. I think he is that kind of petty. He wanted to watch them people fight over his money. That's what I think. Um, and Chadwick knew he was terminal, yet did nothing. And his wife and his mom had to go to court. I forget what I think like a third of his assets they lost because of the cost of the process. So having a plan that what is it called? A legacy strategy. That's the official term. Having a plan,
I like that term.
and that means you got to start having conversations with your parents. As a parent, you got to start having conversations with your children. That means you need to talk to your brothers, your sisters. There need to be conversations happening. You mentioned, Halisi, that you went ahead and you put your name, your parents' bank accounts. Uh, that way, when they do pass, it will be seamless for you to be able to access those funds to take care of whatever needs taken care of.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I have control over the pension. I got powers of attorney. And here's the thing, guys, and you need to have these conversations today. I don't want to put any negativity out there in the world, but one car accident can leave you as just like my parents are now, not able-bodied and not able-minded. And so the notion that, oh, I'm only 60, I'm healthy, I'm not even on any meds, right? Like, I got this. We have this conversation when I'm 90. I receive the fact that that's going to be my reality, but hope for the best, plan for the worst. So outline. And I still have to have a conversation with my son about where everything is. Like it's all in writing, but he's ADD. Like, is he gonna read everything? Or is he right? Like, so I told him we need to have a conversation so that you really understand what you have coming to you. And I said, look, because this is something else with blended families. Now, how do you do it? So collectively, we have 5 kids. I have one. Does he get 50% of the assets, or does he get 20%? At first, it was 20%. Folks start tripping. Now it's going to be 50%.
I think also as a parent, you need to understand who your child is. I think a lot of us think about like trust in terms of, well, I don't want them to get that money until they're such and such age and they know what to do with it. Have you taught them what to do with it? Because a lack of financial literacy is another big impediment to us being able to pass on wealth. Because I think it's the Chinese that have a proverb about the first generation makes the money and the second generation loses it. Because like you can be making all of these money moves, and this is something that I realized I did not do enough of a job. Also, my child wasn't paying attention because there were things I was directly teaching, and as she's almost 30 now, like, what? You told me that?
Really?
Yes, child. I said. So, now that she has kids, I'm thinking about, and how she is my child, I do not know. But the reality is, my forward thinking is not about her. It's about them, because the person she is now is not somebody who is going to be thinking about that. She is very much in the moment. So because I can think to the future, I'm like, well, let me put that in such a way that I can at least look out for them so they don't have to start from scratch. Because if I leave it up to her, they absolutely will.
Definitely. I want to address that, but I did see somebody said that you don't need a lawyer. I tried to do like that online thing.
Are we talking about trust or will?
I don't know. But I'm going to say for the trust, because that to me was more important than just a will.
You cannot do a trust without a lawyer.
I just supposedly they'll walk you through it, and then some lawyer will come on and review it and this and that. But if you're trying to do something very specific, and like I was trying to mimic what Mary Jane said, and that's what we did. And so it becomes a irrevocable trust once we pass away, and the assets in the trust are can only be sold if every person in the trust votes yes. Otherwise, the only thing you can do is borrow against it and use it as an asset. You can, live in the houses, all of that can be negotiated. But selling off pieces, no. So what we did, I was going to say about the lawyer. Check if you work for a big corporation or a bigger corporation, bigger than like 5-10 people, right? Check your benefits. What we had all along, we've been paying like $2 per paycheck for legal services. And in my mind, it's like, I ain't going to jail.
That's immediately where my mind went when I saw that as an option.
Right. I ain't going to jail. What do I need this for? Right. But all of the civil stuff. So we got the trust done for free. We got the power of attorney and all of that stuff, and the what we wanted to do medically. We did all of that stuff with the $4 a month that we were paying through employee benefits. So check that out. You might have access to that and not even know it. But we started having financial planning calls, Zoom calls with the kids to teach them what we know, what the trust is about, and how to manage money well. So the first month or two, it was on and popping. Oh, well, that's nice for you to talk about because you have Rick's Social Security check. Really? Really?
I should think a Social Security check is, first of
Right?
all.
Right? Like can you live off of $2,500 a month in Chicago, baby girl? I know you can't. That's why you went and found a husband. You can't do it. It can't be done. So the notion that we could not have a lower lifestyle for $2,500 a month because we've gotten rid of debt and this and that. It's like, it's not, they wanted a pill. Like, I'm gonna give you the blue pill and you're gonna wake up and realize you're really Princess so-and-so and you got a bank account with $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 in it, plus some investments and all this stuff. That's what they wanted. So no. And don't call me to borrow money because you ain't showing up on the calls. But wait, so you too busy to show up for the calls, but you calling to ask for money for the cheerleading outfit for baby girl. Because they know what to do. They know don't ask for something for themselves because the answer is going to be no. But I can't let my granddaughter not do cheerleading because you have not planned well and you're not showing up for the calls because you're too busy volunteering at the church who is not paying you after hours, after the service.
Okay. So I want to make sure this is very clear. You can do a will without a lawyer because all a will does is all it really can do is say what your wishes are, and who you would like to be the guardian for minor children. But that will has to go to probate or whatever it's called in your state. And that process takes time. That process takes money. And what I have seen in our community many, many times, one, folks don't have a will, still got to go to probate. The state can't decide how to distribute your assets without it going to probate. And as somebody said, who was it? She said,
And I
"I'm
get
letting
some.
the state make any decisions for me. I'm not leaving as Black people. I won't leave any decisions up to the government." Okay. Um, and so this is a prime example. I have a family friend. The father died. I doubt he had a will because he was like a musician. Uh, wife, the title of the house got changed to her. She died, no will. There were 4 children. Nobody ever took it to probate. Even with like in Texas, if you have a small estate, because this is what I did for my mom, because I know all the DIY things. Small estate, it can be an expedited process if all there is the house. They didn't do that. One of the children died. He's got 3 children. So now when y'all talk about selling the house, you've now got to get 6 people to agree and be there physically to sign paperwork and all of this. What a trust does is it lets you skip probate. But trusts are very complicated legal entities. Under no circumstances should anybody be trying to create a trust on their own. Absolutely not. Um, don't do the like Zoom, walk you through it. No, you need a lawyer. There are lawyers that it's, I think a lot of folks assume it is going to be tens of thousands of dollars to create a trust, and that does not have to be the case. So they assume it's too expensive, and either they don't do it or they try to do it themselves. And this is not the thing you want to do yourself. A lot of stuff
Mm-mm.
you can do yourself, but not a trust, not a
No.
trust.
And then if you own property, and then they'll also tell you what you can put in the trust and what you can't. Like you can't put your 401k in the trust. So we're in the process of figuring out how we're going to start moving that money with the least amount of tax implications into brokerage so that the brokerage account can be in the trust, but a tax advantage account ruled by ERISA laws cannot be in the account. So the money's got to be moved, and I'm not moving it all at once because I'm not taking that hit. So that's something that you have to plan for. The other thing is that the we don't own anything. The trust owns it. So that means paperwork has to be filed with the county. Like if you own a home, paperwork has to be filed with the county, taking it out of our names and putting it in the trust's name. We own property in California. That process is totally different. So we had to get a California attorney to do that. And LA County don't play. Like there was a dot missing over the I. So we had to refile, it was like, it took us about 6 months. By that time, we were already here. So going back and forth and FedExing that stuff was not fun, but now it is protected and it is in the trust, and our house in Denver is in the trust. And especially if you are going to be doing something where you could be potentially sued, you can't sue the trust. You sue me, but I don't own anything. I don't own anything. So clothes on my back, you can have that. That's gonna work.
Like I said, I think there is always the assumption that professional services are expensive, but we don't know how expensive is. You and several people in the chat have pointed out that if through your employer you've got that legal aid as an option, use that. That's literally what it's there for.
Exactly.
And Dee makes this comment. There's no shame in using a professional. Many people struggle even to select appropriate investments inside their 401k. Use your resource. That's one of the things that I do is I clean up more often than not. I clean up that mess because a lot of folks get a job. You think HR knows this or that they're going to share that information with you. They are not your friend. They're not there to do that for you. So that's one of the big focuses of the work that I do, is to make sure that you understand these are what the options are, what you can pick. People, when it comes to getting an advisor or a planner, people again assume it's going to be expensive. There are plenty of planners, and I will put the links in the description, who charge a flat fee, an hourly fee. So it's very transparent. You know exactly how much you are paying for their services and what you are getting. I want us to kind of let go of this fear of cost when we've not done the research,
The
we've not asked the
investigation.
questions to really understand, how much does this cost? How much does something like this go for?
Mm-hmm. We paid in LA, which is more expensive than Denver, $900 for the California version of the trust, for my mom's POA and her the PO my POA for her, the medical advisory paperwork, and her will. So for all of that, 900. Now I ended up having to pay a little bit more.
$900, y'all.
900. I ended up having to pay like $75 more because we had made a mistake in the information we gave her and the paperwork had to be refiled. But other than that,
I mean, that is such a small amount to pay for the ability to be able to transfer wealth to the
Assets
next generation.
without the
Like,
government.
we got to get into this kind of, we shouldn't let the tail wag the dog and stop being afraid of costs, and really need to ask ourselves, for this amount of money, what am I getting? Not only did you get the actual legal services for filing the paperwork, drafting things, all that, you're also getting the ability to transfer wealth to future generations. There are three main things, and this is for our community. Three main things that should be happening if you want to make sure that the generations that come after you don't have to start from scratch. Don't wait to start investing. Develop multiple streams of income. Create a legacy strategy. And we've
And
talked about
eliminate
all of
debt.
those in some way. Yes, I would add that to it. And we're talking specifically, we're not talking about don't have a mortgage.
No.
We're not talking about that. We're talking about consumer debt. We're talking about high interest credit card debt. Because again, to me, it comes back to how bad you want it. If this is, you say generational wealth is a priority, creating it, because it's one thing to create it, but you still got to ensure that it gets to the next generation. If all of that is something you're saying is important, and you got to make choices that align with that, and carrying thousands, tens of thousands of dollars in double-digit interest bearing debt is not serving that purpose. You taking food out your mouth, you taking food out of the mouth of future generations.
Yeah, yeah. That is so I just want to add on to that. There's two things. What I'm gonna tell on somebody, but I ain't gonna mention no names. So when we tell people we had about $22,000 to $25,000 worth of credit card debt. And so we were talking to this client. He's like, "Oh, I'm not that bad." I was like, "Okay, good, good. Well, how much is yours?" "Mine's only 20,000."
Um, sir.
I'm like, "Oh, not 22,000, only 20,000." Okay. And so he's like, yeah, but I got the money to pay it off if I want to. Well, why don't you? So I said, well, the one with the biggest balance, what is the interest rate? He said 29.99.
Holy shit.
And this money that you have over here that you could pay it off with, how much money is that money making? Oh, about 12 to 13%. Oh, okay. So you're losing 10 to 15% per every single time you don't take the money out of whatever account you got and pay off that credit card debt. Folks.
I have found the financial industry, credit card companies in particular, have done a very good job of decentering the cost of debt from the debt conversation. They talk about what having credit cards does for you and all of these benefits, but so many people forget that it is costing you money. I don't know any loan, because that's what a credit card is. It is a
Short-term
loan. It
loan.
is a revolving loan. I don't know any loan that you would willingly sign up for that had a 29% interest rate that you would not be busting your ass to pay off. Yet we don't look at credit cards in that way.
I made
And
my
so they've done
payments.
they've done a very good job of making people believe like student loans, that's debt, mortgages, that's debt, my car loan. But a credit card is a loan every time you don't pay it off.
Exactly. Exactly. Talking to folks one-on-one, you hear a lot of stories. And I talked to this woman who, based upon her future lifestyle, has fired. But her financial planner is telling her she needs to work until she's 70. She's 62.
Absolutely not.
What kind of financial planner is that? And he's like, well, he's going to get me into an annuity and he's going to
So he's an
guarantee me,
insurance salesman, is what
and
I'm hearing.
he's going to guarantee me a monthly. I say he can't guarantee doodly squat. We can't even guarantee that you're going to have Social Security until you die. And that's the government. So how's he going to guarantee? And how much is this costing you? Do you really understand what an annuity is? Because to me, it sounds like a whole life insurance policy, what they used to call a whole life, right? And they would guarantee it, like if you leave it in there for 10 years or whatever, they would guarantee you a certain amount of money. And it's like, but based upon what you say you'll get from Social Security, plus all of this money you have over here, you're at, even without Social Security, you're at fire. You're at fire, baby. What are you doing? So be very careful with these so-called financial planners, because what I have seen time and time and time again with the folks that we coach is that they are steering them towards product that they make good commissions off of. That's the only reason to steer them towards stuff that costs so doggone much. I don't know. I don't understand what else they're doing. What they're not doing is trying to make sure that you are making the most amount of money with the least amount coming out, with the least amount of costs. They're not doing that. So be careful.
And one of the things I have said numerous times, if you're new to the channel, you will find so many videos where I am saying this, is that you need to be able to ask those questions, and you need to know, what are you paying for this? Because folks, particularly our community, get sucked in like, oh, I can meet with this financial planner, this financial advisor for free. Because again, we've made up in our head actually paying people for their service is going to be something beyond what we can afford, and we haven't even found that out. And what you end up doing is, yes, they are not taking money from you in that moment, but they are either selling you products that they make money on, they make commission straight up. And I don't know that something you can financially benefit from, if you're recommending that to me, I don't know that that's the best option for me. Or they're going to charge you a percentage of assets under management or something like that. And this, I am not a math person. I may be a money person, but math is a different thing.
That's
And
what the
folks,
calculator's for. Where's my phone?
folks be like, well, they're only charging me 2%. So I get the other 98%. But when you do the math, that 2% over the lifetime of your portfolio, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars.
It could be.
So again, to me, the root of this is our assumption that things are expensive, and we've not asked the questions to find out exactly what they cost. Co-living, the co-living life, I said it right here. You need to know the total cost of ownership of everything, because you can't, without that piece, you cannot make sound financial decisions.
Yes.
So of the four things we say need to happen: eliminate debt, don't wait to start investing. Okay. Some of y'all probably know this. I host a Get Started Investing Challenge to help people like do exactly that, get started investing. Because the assumption is, again, you got to have a lot of money. It's hard. It's not. Literally, you can invest with $3.
Yep.
Okay. And I know that there are folks in our community who are like, okay, so like, let's take me, for example. I was a public school teacher and I made virtually no money for 20 years. Okay. And because right now I just saw a thing for the state of Texas about like what somebody needs to make to be comfortable. And with 20 years experience, I was not making that. I was at least 15 grand lower.
And
Okay?
that was back then when the cost
That
of
was
living
back
was
then.
lower.
Okay. And I look at the current teacher pay scales. If I'd have stuck around for another 8 years, I might have made an extra 1,000 or two per year. Okay. How does somebody like me have assets to pass on to somebody else. What I don't want people to get caught up in is this idea that I have to be like moving like the big dogs. No, we
Mm-mm.
can start as puppies. We can invest $5 every week. You can put that money in a Roth IRA and it grows tax-free. You start early enough, you continue to put that money in there. By the time you want to access that money, there could be millions of dollars in there that you don't have to pay any taxes on.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can do things like a new hack that people are using that doesn't really get talked about is 529 plans. Get you a 529 that's meant to fund education. Again, it's a tax advantage account. The money can go in there pre-tax. It grows tax deferred. If you use it for educational purposes, no taxes. Okay, well, like my oldest, who I thought was going to Grinnell, was like, I don't want to go to college. So what do you do with that money? You change the name of the beneficiary on the account. And now little brother, little sister's the beneficiary. Okay, they don't use all the money. Y'all continue to put money in there. You can change the beneficiary to people in the next generation. The whole time you are passing wealth from one generation to the next, and you're not paying any taxes on it. And we're talking about you don't need tens of thousands of dollars to do that.
No, no.
So nobody should leave this conversation today thinking they can't.
Yeah. If you say so, then no, you can't. And y'all, that did not exist when I was really young. That 529 plan did not exist. The HSA plans that they have today and the way that they're set up did not exist when I was young. And I saw someone in the chat talking about 2% of what? 2% of whatever. But like
Whatever.
for for this, the situation I was talking about, it was going to be almost 10%. So let's just say you got
That's
$500,000 in
wrong.
there. Oh, but I'm getting 90%. Now, I'm not a math person either, but I believe 10% of 500,000 is 50,000 because 1% would be 5,000, right?
Sounds about right.
$50,000, which was almost 2 years of her yearly expenses in Mexico, where she was going, right? Like, what are we doing? Don't get fooled by the okey doke. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. It probably is. But here's the deal, folks. If you are investing and you're being consistent, like you're putting your $5 in, if your portfolio is averaging 15% per year in growth, it's going to double in 5 years. It's going to double in 5 years. That sounds pretty good. 5 years goes like this, lickety split. We've already been here 2 years. Wasn't that fast, Adelia?
Yeah.
I mean, you met us before we even moved. We had boxes behind us and all that nonsense. Right? But like, 15% and now, and if you can only afford to put $5 in, I challenge you every month, increase it by 1%. Just 1%. You won't feel it. And by the end of the year, you will have increased by 12%. And now you
And
start to
you
cook with
have done
Crisco.
no extra work.
That's right.
Because notice one of the things we said was you need to make more money. When you say you necessarily had to be out there like hustling to make that money. I mean, like if it wasn't for exactly what Halisi just described, I would not be sitting here right now. I would be at somebody's job. Because that is in essence, I just took my little teeny tiny teacher money and invested it in index funds and left it alone. That is literally all it takes.
It's not rocket science.
It is not. Now, I do want to speak because I think in our community, this is a particularly sort of like, I'm not going to say a touchy thing, but it's a place where a lot of blame gets thrown around. You know, where there is inherited property, there are people who talk about, like, don't sell grandma's house, blah, blah, blah. This might be unpopular, but I think there are some times when you do need to sell grandma's house because if are the people who inherited that house, do they all have their own houses? Is anybody interested in taking on grandma's house, either to live in it, to keep it up, to use it as an investment property? If the answer is no, even if maybe some of them financially could stand to take it on as an investment property, like from a financial standpoint, it would make sense for them, but they don't have the drive or the intention, it might be better to sell grandma's house, take those proceeds and invest them in like a family fund, a brokerage account, or if there is a trust, put that in the trust. That way the that was
Right.
tied up in grandma's house does go to benefit future generations. But this idea that we got to hold on to grandma's house no matter what, that would be right for everybody's situation.
So what we've done in the trust is that we have set aside a certain percentage of the other money for not only maintenance, but for somebody to manage the properties. So they can choose to use that money to manage the properties. It is there to do that. Because no, everybody does not want to be a landlord, but they want to get them rents. Right. And I get it. It's a pain in the butt to be a landlord, especially when you got family living in your house and they think rent is a suggestion. They had to learn the hard way. We got a kid who thought that we were going to give her the house. Like, we got other kids. This is just you. And you think we supposed to give you the house, but you ain't got the credit. Well, ain't nobody got credit. Don't speak for yourself. We got credit. You don't have the credit to get a loan to buy it. So you want us to be the bank. This is what family does. And so you got to get a thick skin and put your foot down. Don't get sucked into that or guilted into the nonsense, because for people who think in the here and now and the here and now only, they're not equipped to think about the future. They're just not. They don't think that way, and so you got to think that way for them. And they will try to run the okey doke on you. Don't fall for it, because family will keep you broke. They will keep you broke. The one person who's doing well, everybody got their hands out. Well, just go ask, Papa Rick and Grandma Halisi.
They got it. They got it.
They think they do. They think they do. Look, I'll kick my son out. I'll kick your behind out too. That piece.
Okay. Now, all situations a little different than mine because with the exception of a house I've inherited that I'm still wrestling with what to do with and what makes the most sense for who I am and for who my children are. Because my original plan made some assumptions about who my children were that did not bear out. So I'm having to reevaluate things. So most of my assets are invested, which doesn't necessarily necessitate a trust because those have direct beneficiaries listed on them. But y'all have got property, you've got investments, you've got children from multiple marriages, and then there's the added part of y'all don't live in the United States anymore. You've got a trust in Colorado, you've got a trust in California, but you live elsewhere. Has that figured into y'all's legacy planning?
So yes. So the trust is federal. So you don't have to get a trust for each state, but how it deals with submitting paperwork for what's in the trust has to be done state to state. So, so there's that piece. The other thing is that our will, our trust, our medical directives do not necessarily translate to Portugal. So we are in the process of getting the whole thing redone for Portugal. Um, and so, yeah, death certificates and all of that stuff. Well, I have no idea how it works. That's why we're hiring somebody. Because I'm not going. I can't Google in Portuguese. I ain't there yet. And the way European Portuguese speak, it translates really weird. Like, so my Brazilian friend says they speak like they're still on horses in carriages.
Mexican Spanish is that way. A lot of times. The way you have to put a sentence together, I'm like, this sounds like it's out of the 1600s.
Exactly. And so when I translate some of this stuff, I'm like, huh? I couldn't even get like the withdrawal from the ATM. Like that wasn't even translating properly. So I'm not going to even try and DIY any parts of it. Plus, I don't know Portuguese law. One thing that I do know is that if you own property here in Portugal, by law, it has to go equally to each one of your kids. You do not get to like homeboy who's on drugs out, boopty booping around, and you don't want to leave. They don't care. He might get his stuff together. It doesn't matter whether he ever gets his stuff together. Like you have to leave it, 20%, 50%, however many kids you have. So that is a different thing. Now, I want to see, because I'm not about that. If we ever buy something here, I want to see how having some kind of trust, I don't know how that works here, would eliminate the necessity to say everybody gets some when, I got stepkids calling me all kind of names out that, no, we ain't doing that. I don't know. We ain't doing that. So yeah, I have no idea. When I find out, you will know. But again, I'm going to hire someone that I know knows what she's talking about and knows how to act creatively and not just say, this is the law. It has to be this way, blah, blah, blah. No, she's like, okay, how can we make this work? Let me see, So you want to find somebody who is willing to try and make your needs codified into a document that will be legally acceptable to the courts.
And what you said about inheritance, that's one of the reasons I have no intention to buy property abroad, because I understand who my children are, and that complicating the process after I am gone for somebody who doesn't even want a passport, where you'd have to come physically show up to, do the probate process. Like I'm setting myself up if I do that. So that has figured into some of my choices.
And you can always change it. You can always change it down the line. Baby girl who doesn't want a passport today. So let's see what the politics looks like. She might change her mind 5 years from now, right? We've got some kids who's like, yeah, in a minute. And we have 2 kids that were like, okay, they're probably going to be here in the next year. We can see the writing on the wall, not living here, but at least visiting and saying, okay, could this be an option for me? So,
there's
what is true
options
today is not necessarily true tomorrow. And the great part about a trust in the way it's created is that it's easily changed. The assets in it can be easily changed without having to start from scratch.
Now, I want to get your take on this. Because as someone who, like, in the world Adelia lives in, the father of children does not exist. I'm I know technically he is alive, but he don't exist. So when I
Don't
think
exist in my life
about
either.
generational wealth, or how can I keep my kids and my grandkids from starting from zero, I think about what I can do. And because I was not a high earning person, I am thinking about what are some ways in which I can be of assistance to them that maybe isn't just about leaving them a shit ton of money. And I saw this post from the Broke Black Girl, where she talks about how generational wealth isn't always going to look like investment accounts and properties. It could be things like giving your younger cousins ride to work so they can save up money, helping your sister improve her resume so she can get a job that pays more, teaching your grandparents or your parents about internet scams that target older people, so they don't get ripped off. um, I
I love that.
think we get very caught up in, I don't have the money. And the amount of money they're thinking about is they don't know. Because again, they ain't done the math.
Right? How about, letting your kids live in your house at cost? Because and my son finally recognized, he's like, Mom, I just want to tell you. Oh, you finally get it, Negro? You know, I understand that you are gifting us with this amount of space under market value, and that you could have some strangers up in here getting twice what you're
Paying
charging
you
us.
more money.
He pays $800 a month.
There's no way in hell he's getting anything $800.
Right? Right? This is our 4-bedroom house in Denver, right? He doesn't live in the whole thing. He's got roommates, but he's got the whole basement to himself. She's on the top floor. It's like, this is another way that you can help with generational wealth. Now, what I told him to do is, I expect that the gap between what you would be paying just for even a single, or what do they call it, studio apartment, right? You can get a decent studio apartment in Denver, Colorado for under $1,100, $1,200, $1,300 a month, unless you want to live in the hood. And of course, Denver's hoods are not that bad. It ain't like LA, but still, right? So, and things are just getting crazy in the States anyway. So that gap, I want to see you putting that in your account, your retirement account, your 401k, or your IRA. So that's another way that we can help folks build generational wealth, is by offering those opportunities for them to spend less, and hopefully educate them on what they're supposed to do with the extra money.
Yes. Because often I hear people who are very much immersed in hustle culture, Black excellence, and they're like, very much, I will sleep when I'm dead. I got to do all of this thing so I can leave this behind. Yet, there are folks struggling now. There are things you could do now that would help set people up. And because I think about that, like in theory, if I die when, the actuaries say I should, given my age and my weight and my family history, my daughter will be almost retired. So it's not that I'm doing these things for her to be 50, 60 years old to have money. I think about, okay, what are some things I could do now that would keep her from, let's say, digging a really big financial hole that is then going to impact her children? So that might mean I'm the one that ends up replacing her roof when the time comes. Because as a single mom of 3, she ain't got it. And she could take on some debt to get it, but is that the best use of her money and her resources at this time? So I've really tried to rethink and expand what are some ways that I can help those coming behind me so that they don't have to start with nothing.
Exactly. Exactly. And this notion of die with zero, right? Obviously, it would be a lot more helpful for my son to get a chunk of money, let's just say right after he gets married. that is the plan for the trust. I'm not giving you money to, buy a car. Like, the trust is not set up to invest in depreciable assets. It's only set up to invest in education or appreciating assets. So if you need a down payment for a house, take it from the trust, you know, um, or what have you. So, or, whatever it is, replacing the roof, whatever it is you're trying to do. Because, yeah, if I live to be the age that I plan on living till, healthy, of sound body and mind, at least until 92, heck, yeah, he's going to be 50. He's going to be 60. Does he really need it at that point? He needs it more before the age of 40 than he's going to need it at 60, assuming he continues on the same trajectory. And is the case with, Rick is 10 years older than me, give or take. And so his oldest daughter is only 12 years younger than me. She thought he was cradle robbing. I was like, thank you. Thank you. I received that. But yeah, she's your age. 47, 46, somewhere in there, right? And yet, so she should not necessarily need it. But the kids, they're going to be getting ready for college in the next few years. I think the youngest is in ninth grade, or the oldest is in ninth grade. So where's that going to come from? And she's a single mom. So as opposed to waiting until you die.
And I think that's, that just said it. It's really, I think we've kind of come back around here, because it's really about changing our mindset about it, because some of the things we just mentioned are very like a communal way to think about wealth, which flies in the face of American individualism,
Rugged individualism,
and late stage capitalism. But, you know, I think for our community in particular, because of the systematic barriers we really need to kind of rethink, what does helping the next generation
look like, right? And we don't have the luxury of not pooling resources, because I don't care who you are. If you're Black, and you don't work for the government, I can guarantee you're underpaid. I can guarantee you. And the only reason with the government you may not be is because they say all N1s make this, all N2s make that, right? And so they try to follow the rules of the laws that they created. But you still might be on the low end of that as a Black person. Because we're starting late, we can't afford to have the silly, unhumane notion of individualism, because the bottom line is ain't none of us did any of this stuff all by ourselves. And when I hear white folks saying, well, you didn't do crap.
No, you didn't.
Because even if you didn't go to public schools or what have you, you have benefited from the collective. You have benefited from the streets you drive on. I help pay for that. You help pay for that. And people are so ignorant that they don't think of things like that. But the competition, the envy, the jealousy, and all of that stuff that happens within our community, we need to let it go. And the lack of trust. Lack of trust usually comes from lack of information, lack of education, lack of knowledge, right? I don't know about this trust. She's trying to cheat me out my money. Baby, I make more money than you. I got more money than you. I've got more wealth than you. I'm trying to help you out, sister girl. What you doing? But because of fear and the distrust that percolates in America by design, so that they can keep us at each other, divided, right, and conquered, we have this innate mistrust, and that's something that we've got to let go of. I've had this conversation with so many family members that are living paycheck to paycheck, even though they've made so much more money than we've ever made. But they ain't trying to hear it. They're just not trying to hear it. And you know what? Oh no. If you say so. If you say so.
When I got divorced, he accused me of stealing his money because he couldn't figure out why he was in his eye up to his eyebrows in debt. And here I was bopping around. And he was like, you must have been like pulling a little extra off the side or whatever. And I'm like he made more than me, but not that much more. Like, baby boy, like what extra money you have? But that vindicated like the choices I've made. Like, I didn't buy a house after I got divorced. I rented. I kept the same car. I minimized my credit card debt, like all of those things. Um, so yeah,
Mhm. Yep, I
it's
think the
just
same could be true for, my ex-husband. He and his new wife got twin Teslas. And they still, again, made so much more money than us, and they are working their behinds off. Now they have their own business, but it's a brick and mortar. It's not like what we're doing, where we work when we want and and it's supplemental. No, they are working like they're starting from zero with their twin Teslas and their house with the pool. And now they got two kids going to college, because of course, he couldn't be bothered to pay for his first son's college. But that's another story. That's another story. And I'm sure he's wondering, what, like, back in 2008, you were calling asking if I could put, Jabari on in my insurance. So how you a millionaire now? Because I got a clue, and I didn't get the twin Teslas. That's how, that piece right there. When we moved, I sold my car. It was a 2008 Subaru that we sold in 2022 when we moved here. I hadn't had a car payment in so long. And I said, I'm driving this car until the axles break. Like, it's going to have to be unroadworthy, you know, get my oil change, keep it up, keep it up, keep it up, and it's just not that important. I am so happy we didn't get those twin Teslas, because the life that we are living now is worth so much more than impressing somebody that I don't like with them stupid Teslas.
that
People I don't
part
even
right
talk to
there.
anymore, right?
That part. That part. And so let's talk about what you're doing. I just dropped in the chat. There is a Portugal summer meetup that you are hosting. Tell the people about it.
With Krishan of Blacksit Global. That's the great thing about the Exodus Summit community. You find your business partners, you find your what kind of partner to keep you guys on track,
Accountability.
accountability partners. So Delia came to our first meetup last year. Well, we have expanded it since then, but unfortunately, only the freedom reception, it is the week of Juneteenth. And so that Monday, the 17th, we have a freedom reception at a Black-owned restaurant called Soul Kitchen and Bar. The food is on point, and we're going to have fun. So that's going to be that day. And then there's a boat excursion the next day. We might have some tickets come up for somebody who's canceled, but right now it is sold out. So that's what's happening. We also did a Move to Portugal virtual summit. So if you are interested in moving to Portugal, the replays are available, and you can check that out over on our Black Utopia. So fun stuff.
There are links to all of those in the description of this video. Like I said, I also linked the conversation I had with a probate lawyer. If our conversation has gotten you thinking about, okay, so what happens to my stuff when I'm not here anymore? You know, definitely give that a listen.
Yeah. I
So yeah.
think the best idea that we came up with was doing the family finance calls. And I think I'm going to bring them back around, and whoever participates, participates. Um, it's interesting when you only got 500 subscribers, ain't nobody taking you seriously. But now they're like, oh, it's
Y'all know
like,
what y'all
really?
talking about.
Like, seriously? Y'all know us. Why we got to have subscribers for families to listen?
I mean, here's the thing. We could have a whole nother conversation about how unless something is being said by a certain subset of people, you can't trust it. It's not true. The knowledge doesn't have the same value. Um,
Mhm.
I was lamenting to my roommate when I came back from visiting my daughter, and I have all of this wisdom, and she is not interested in any of it. Like because I am always a cautionary tale. Stuff always happens to me, and I figure it out. And then I can tell you, don't let this, that, and the other thing happen. And she has no interest in learning any of that stuff. And so I'm like, I got all this to
Girl,
give.
you just don't
Oh,
understand. You're old. You don't understand how it is today. If you would just listen,
yep,
I'm listening, baby. I'm listening, but you ain't making no sense.
yep.
It
Thank
changes
you.
though. It gets better. It does get better. They get a
I hope
clue.
so. I mean, I did at least get a text the other day that was like, I guess I'm gonna take this as a compliment. She was like, "You made all of this look so easy." So I
Mm,
was like, I don't know if I should say I'm sorry or thank you, but but I think slowly we're starting to see like, oh, my mama might know a thing or two, maybe,
yeah,
maybe.
yeah. She'll get there. She'll get there. And yeah, it is a compliment.
Well, thank you so much for joining
Absolutely.
me today. I appreciate you saying yes. As mentioned before, if you're not subscribed to Halisi and Rick's channel, Our Black Utopia, you are missing out. Definitely do that if you have any interest in living in Portugal, because Halisi didn't really talk about this, but their Move to Portugal Summit literally covered every aspect of it. So if Portugal is on your radar, you should check out those relays because
Yeah.
I don't know any other place where those resources and that information is available so
Mm-mm.
affordably. I don't know.
No.
Absolutely not.
For the cost of a consulting call, you get the whole thing from immigrant attorneys to tax specialists to how to move your pet. Adele, you can relate to that. That
Yep.
sounds like a kid. I ain't doing that. I'm not doing that.
It is work. It is work. All right.
It is.
Okay, so enjoy the rest of your Friday evening, and I will see the rest of y'all live next Wednesday. Oh, yes. Next Wednesday is going to be interesting. I'm only going live one time next week, but I'm not going to give it away just yet, but y'all going to want to be here Wednesday night. Bye, guys.